And I just think, oh my God, once we really start taking back power, because that's really about taking back power over your life. It doesn't matter what happens to you. We've got choices, we've got power, and we can actually exert that. And I think now, at this time where people are starting to pause and really look at their life, they're starting to realise that no one else really is in charge of your life, so to speak, without you saying yes.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Inspired By with me, your host, Manjeet Nijjar. Thank you for joining me again. This week, I have an amazing lady by the name of Hyacinth Myers. Hyacinth and I met about 3-4 years ago. We had the same business coach, and that's where we met, and we kind of connected and stayed connected, really. So we get on exceptionally well. We have a lot in common, our thought process, spirituality, females trying to make our way in the world and so on. So I don't want to go into too much detail about her. I mean, she has achieved so much in her life. Just reading her bio here, I know her, but I didn't know a lot of the stuff that she's actually achieved that's on her bio, which you'll be able to see at the bottom of this video. But yeah, so without going into too much more detail, because I don't want to give it all away, Hyacinth, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Manji. Oh, thank you for having me here, actually.
Oh, I'm glad you took the time out, because I know how busy you are with all your community projects, plus your 2 businesses, and plus looking after your son and homeschooling at the moment as well, because we're in lockdown. So you've got a lot going on, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, Hyacinth, who is Hyacinth? Where did she come from? Which part of the world is she from? Which part of the UK is she from? What do you do? Where do you live?
Oh my, that's such a big question.
Well, let's break it down then. Which part of the UK are you from?
I'm actually from London in the UK, specifically East London, which they now call North, Hackney. And I was actually born in the 70s, so I'm nearly 50 now. And just lived most of my life in this borough when I didn't live in Plymouth at university and Birmingham for a year. I think it was 97 to 98 I lived in Birmingham as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I know you as Hyacinth, my friend, but then let me count off. You're an entrepreneur. Yeah. You are the CEO and founder of Empower 7.
Yeah.
So women's empowerment that you do. You are an intuitive empowerment coach. You're also a business coach, a spiritual coach. You run your own creative business as well, Soul Creations, am I right?
Yeah, Soul Conscious Creations.
Soul Conscious Creations. You're a big member of your community. You take part in a lot of the community projects and so on. You've been to university. You've got BA honours, am I right in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
BSc honours, actually, sorry.
No, BSc honours in what?
Social policy and criminal justice, because my passion was young people and prisons at the time, actually.
I think you are a force to be reckoned with, seriously. I mean, you do all of this stuff. When do you have time for you?
Do you know what? People always say that, and I do have time for me. I'm just... I think I'm so structured. I know some people really don't like structure, but I've restructured since a child. So from about the age of 15, I got so structured that everything has its place. And then I also have my downtime. So for me to be able to, I use meditation every day to relax and writing and journaling. And I'm starting to feel tired, like usually every 6 weeks to 8 weeks, I like to go away, breaks away, like weekends out of London, where I can just not be mum, not be anything for 2 to 3 days, and just really fully recover, because I feel like I do a lot, and I do work hard, but I also like to rest.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to get back and reset yourself in order to offer the service you offer. You have to take time out for yourself as well. Now, I know you've had some challenges in your life, you know, and your story is really, really inspiring. What you've been through with your little one, and how that has kind of spurred you on and inspired you to do what you do to help others who've been in similar situations. So could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I can actually. Where to start? Do you know what? I think from a child, I mean, before even having difficult young woman, and with my younger son, I even lost his brother. As a young child, I grew up in a home with a lot of domestic violence. That was my spurring factor to really start my community work. Yeah, because I just thought there has to be other people out there with work. And also, I think I learned from a very young age about gratitude, and actually gratitude and staying present to what's happening just creates kind of abundance in what it is you're looking for. So I thought, because we was in a very tricky situation as a child up until I was 16, and I'm the oldest child, starting to give back my time to others who were going through actually similar things or worse used to make me, one, feel really happy, but also learn more about the world and how to control our thoughts, our behaviour. And I feel like that was kind of my step into personal development. And then fast forward years of, like, you know, going through a number of things that women go through sometimes. So if
you don't mind talking about them, some of the things, just to share with our other females who are listening to this, and not just females, but to the guys who are watching this, you know, because the more we can share, you know, hopefully people can learn and pick up from that as well.
Yeah, I think so I went through I went through lots of stuff. I went through abuse as a young woman, actually, being assaulted, lots of things. But what I decided to do, especially around that time with that, was actually to start to go into the prisons and work with people who were sex offenders, who had committed rape as well, because that was something, I know it might be triggering for some people, but that was something I thought, I don't want it to hang over my head for my lifetime. I actually wanted to be able to move on and actually deal with it.
That actually says a lot about you as an individual, where you've been through something and yet you're putting so much back into society, because you don't want other people, you know, as much as you can, to go through something similar.
Yeah, I just thought, for me, I mean, I think I'm always thinking about other people. I've always known from a young age we're all connected. It doesn't matter where we're from. Things like race, class, all of these are social constructs. And as far as I'm concerned, if I see you, I'm seeing you as a soul, because I'm quite spiritual, like on a soul level, on a heart level. And I really hate suffering. I just think suffering is just quite a horrible kind of, almost like man-made. If we were all doing what we should be doing across the world, everybody, leaders and everything else, there really wouldn't be no suffering. So for me, I just always think, how can I give back, or how can I inspire other people to not make their stories stop them? Because so many people make stories and circumstances that have happened to them actually stop them from moving on, and just stop them in their life. And stop them from living a life as well.
So if we can rewind a little bit then to, you were going into prisons. Where did you go from there?
So from there, I actually started to, that was in, I'm trying to find back my time, that was in the early 90s. So I was still quite young. That was before I went to university. And I did that for 4 years with an organisation, and that was really going to see lifers whose families had disconnected from them because of their crimes, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I started moving.
That must have been quite tough, though, like going into prison.
I was a very young woman. I was really young, actually. I think I was maybe 18. Yeah, I was about 18 years old.
Mm.
And it was very scary.
Sorry, say that again?
Very scary, but it was also very enlightening, because for me, I just realised, actually, I think we all have judgments about people in prisons, and for me, it just opened up my eyes that they're actually normal people. I hate the word normal, but just normal people, and some of them have committed crimes that they regret, some don't. But I was working with people really that had committed crimes that, one, not only were they actually regretted those crimes, they'd actually been moved into a therapeutic prison. So it was a prison that actually reforms, and that prison was working really well compared to just a normal prison where someone would just go and do a sentence and then be released.
So where did you go from there then? So, I mean, that in itself, again, like I said, it says a lot about you as an individual at such a young age, to put yourself out there and just learn so much from other people. I mean, it's quite obvious, like you said, you're a very heart-centered person. It's about connecting souls together. That came through quite quickly and quite early on for you as an individual. Whereas with some of us, we can wait years before, if ever, we kind of figure that out, that actually it's more about the soul. It's more about the internal person and how you connect with each other that way, not necessarily the externals. Yeah,
so true. And I came from a family where no one was really spiritual, so I was kind of a strange one as well. So a lot of not being sure of myself. But what I did know is that I really loved working in the community, and a lot of my early work and most of my work in the community, because this year's actually 34 years working in the community, most of my work I've done for free. I've not actually been paid for. I've done space of work, projects that I've been obviously paid for, but a lot of my work has just been really passion, because people and communities really are the driving force in society. But also people are, once you kind of move into a community and do some work, then you can change so many lives, because you impact that person and they automatically start impacting others.
So you went to university, you studied there. What was it you studied at university?
I studied social policy and criminal justice. It does sound quite like, what's social policy? But it was actually health, education and housing, but management level. And the criminal justice was really about studying law and comparative policing mostly.
What made you want to get into that?
Do you know, at the time, because I was so interested in the prisons and I was really interested in young people, I was starting to look into probation work or working in bail hostels and stuff. And I really loved law, but I didn't want to do a straight law degree. And a social policy, I always thought, because I'm also interested in health and education, then why not do a combined degree that actually gave me all of that? And I think for me, that degree was so insightful, because it wasn't just looking at local and UK, it was looking at global. So everything was comparative, with other parts of the world. So it was really interesting, actually. I loved that degree. Yeah.
Okay, so you got your degree, but you weren't expected to do well, though, were you? Coming from Hackney, and like from the family, like you said, with the abuse, domestic abuse that you witnessed and so on as a youngster, nobody really expected you to go to university and get a degree.
Yeah, I mean, because in my family, where I grew up, most children really didn't go to university. They didn't. And also in my family, I was the first person in all the generations. So my mum is white English. We traced back her family in 5 generations. Nobody had been to university. So I was the first person on my mum's side of the family to actually go to university. They were like very working class, that had left school, a lot of them between the ages of 11 to 14 to go and work. So, this was really unusual. And also because of where we grew up in that estate, most people really didn't aspire to do that.
And I think that's where you've made a difference, though, is that you aspired to do it, you did it, and now you're putting back into the community. But we'll come to that in a little bit, about what you're doing currently. I just want to so you've got your degree, against all odds, so to speak. Then what happened after that? Where did you go with that degree? What did you do with it?
I was still doing work then with young people. So I didn't use my degree exactly how I wanted to. I decided afterwards the probation kind of service was not really for me, just the way it was. I felt like I wouldn't be able to make the impact I really wanted to make. So I was working with young people still. It was mostly seasonal work. So it was with young people who were 5 to 16 in the adventure playground. So it was really youth work. And that's what I carried on doing for maybe about a year. And then I was pregnant with my first child. So
you had your first child and you were about 26, 27 at the time. And what happened with that relationship?
Sadly, that relationship actually ended within the first 5 months of my son being born. And it was it was a really tough time because I'd left London and I'd moved up to Birmingham so that we could be together. And my son was born in Birmingham. And then when that relationship came to an end, I thought I have to come back to London because I was finding it so hard being away from all family and friends. And when I went up there, I was also quite heavily pregnant. I'd literally left work a few weeks before I moved up there. So came home and then
I mean, having no friends, so to speak, there in Birmingham, you had to come back for the support because you're a single parent, you needed that support. Family and friends around you.
Yeah, definitely. And also because my sister, my sister is just amazing. She actually has 3 lovely girls, and my sister was like my rock. She still is, even though she doesn't live in London anymore, but she's like my rock because she'd already had her child by then. And it felt like it's so easy watching my sister, how to look after her child.
It's not easy. There's no manual.
And the thing is, even though I'm a mother, I wasn't really maternal. So I was not really the auntie. I looked after children once they got to about 5 and they could do things for themselves. So the baby was really quite new to me, and there wasn't really family members with babies. If they did, I literally would hold them and just kind of give them back. So
there you are. You've got this degree. You're now a single parent and dealing with everything that comes with that, raising a child by yourself. How did that kind of make you feel from what your calling was, which was to help people in the community and so on? So how did it sort of take you off on a different track for a while? Did you stay on track? What happened?
It actually took me in a different direction. So I just knew I couldn't be just staying at home looking after my son, because I knew that would kind of drive me crazy in a way, because I'm so used to doing so much. So I carried on doing bits of different voluntary work. And I think by then I was doing health promotion work with an organisation. And then I decided to retrain. So I went back to college and actually decided to retrain in my holistic therapies, because I thought I want to find something that I can fit around my son and school, but also before school, that I could do work before he actually started school age. So
because you are very much a giver. you do give and keep giving.
Yeah.
And that is, again, something I admire about you so much, because you don't think about yourself, and sometimes to your detriment, as where you don't think about yourself, you think about others. But I'm glad to hear that you do go off, every 6 or 7 weeks to do a reset. So you've got a child, you're bringing him up with support of your sister and so on and so forth. I know you had another little one,
Yeah.
who sadly is no longer with us.
Yeah.
And it's something you talk quite openly about on your social media and so on. So would you mind going into a little bit about that?
No, that's fine. So I had, so when my oldest son was 7, then I was pregnant with my second child. It was a really short relationship, actually, but really short relationship. And to my horror, I was actually pregnant with twins, which was actually really quite shocking.
Yeah.
It was also just another part in my life when I've had to dig deep and just go on, actually, regardless. So myself and his dad split up while I was pregnant. So I went through the pregnancy on my own. It was a really tricky pregnancy as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was only 34, but I think there were so many things that were constantly going wrong from the beginning, and I was being told that I was going to lose the boys anyway. But despite
that, it's heartbreaking to hear that, though. That
it is.
You're going to lose the babies. Okay, they weren't planned, but
yeah.
Once you're pregnant and you decide to continue with the pregnancy, you don't want to hear. You don't expect to hear. Oh, by the way, you're going to lose them.
I know, and that was something that was always really just scaring me. But if I tell you some of the series of events, that's why I know these sons were supposed to be born, because I didn't even know I was pregnant, and I'd booked a holiday to North Africa. So I had injections, which you're not supposed to have if you're pregnant.
Yeah.
I actually fell down at a most beautiful waterfall, taking photos of my camera in North Africa. So I had quite a bad accident, pregnant. My sons were still there. Came home and was involved in an accident on the bus, where I was thrown on the bus, and was in A&E the next day. My sons were still there. So all of these things. And then I was constantly in an A&E because of near loss, heavy bleeding, all this kind of stuff. But they were both still born. Both of them were born at 23 weeks, which is so early.
Wow, yeah.
And that was quite shocking in a way, but I kept on feeling they're going to come really early. And I am quite a spiritual person, so before I even knew I had twins, I dreamt that I was having twins. So when they told me I'm having twins, I thought, okay, I've already dreamt that, I'm kind of preparing now. And it was just quite a traumatic experience, because I ended up going to the hospital on my own, waking up really early in the morning. No one was there, so I gave birth on my own. It's just really difficult, actually. No pain relief. My other son was breech. If you think about it now, it's quite horrific, but thank God for meditation, because I really, with pain or anything, I just kind of zone out into such a deep hypnotic state, actually, with myself. I just think that's the only way I got through that, actually.
Yeah. I mean, again, such a strong individual, such a strong woman, honestly, to go through all of that by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It just, again, I admire you so much for what you've been through, what you've achieved, and what you continue to achieve. I can't imagine how it must have felt to go through everything you went through, knowing that the twins weren't going to make it.
Yeah. It was really hard. It was hard. The good thing, I think, for me, because once I gave birth to them, I just thought, oh my God, they both had to be resuscitated, so they were not breathing, and they took them away. And I just remember sitting in that room for about an hour, because I think I called my mum, and it took her about an hour to get to the hospital from where we live.
Mm-hmm.
So my mum was the first person who came, and she did say, are they alive? Because they weren't expected to even survive. The doctors did say to me when they were born, they're not going to survive probably an hour. We'll be lucky with 24 hours, so prepare. So I was like, oh my God. And I just thought, I'm not listening to that. I'm actually blocking it out. And a specialist nurse came in and said to me about resuscitation, we have to decide whether you want them to be resuscitated if something happens again. And I said to her, I'm not making that decision. That's God's decision.
Wow, that is like...
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
And now you've been asked to make a decision.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, do you want us to revive your children or not?
Yeah.
You've literally just given birth, and having to make a decision like that, like you said, I'm going to leave it up to God.
Yeah, and I think they probably thought I was a bit nuts, to tell you the truth, because they'd asked me that decision when I came in, and I said to them, I'm in labour, and they said, you can't be in labour, you're only 23 weeks. And I said to them, I'm in labour, I've had a child already, I know I'm in labour. And when they was doing the assessment, they said to me, so this was before the birth, if they're born, we have to decide whether to resuscitate. So that's when the first mention of resuscitation came in, and I said to them, I'm not deciding.
Yeah. And
then by the time they went out of the room, my first son started to be born. There's no way. Obviously, they take the earth to, preserve life. So once that child is being born, you can no longer make that decision. So obviously, their duty now is to resuscitate, and that's what happened. And then when I had the second thing, I thought, I'm not deciding. I didn't decide the first time I'm here. I'm not going to decide. And it was such a roller coaster for weeks, but also for months, because my first son, both of them were such fighters. And my youngest son passed away when he was 3 weeks old. And I always think, because I'm so spiritual and I'm into numbers, he was born at 23 weeks and he passed at 23 days. So for me, that's quite significant. And that was really hard when you've got one baby in the hospital, one child that's passed away, and then your other child who is now 8 years old, and you're trying to run a normal life, taking him to school. If his brothers was critically ill, then I'd bring him straight to the hospital from school. And that was kind of my life, 6.5 months. I don't know how I did it.
Rewind just a little bit.
Okay.
So you've given birth to 2 beautiful little boys. You've been asked to make a decision. Do you want to resuscitate or not? And one of them, unfortunately, passes into the light. How do you deal with those emotions? Because you now have a little boy who's relying on you, running around and so on. Then you've got this tiny little soul, which is relying on you. And then you've got another little soul that's actually already moved on. So as a mother, how do you deal with that myriad of emotions between all these, between your children, that you've got different emotions about what's actually happening to each one of your children?
Yeah, I mean, it was so hard. If I think about it now, I think, how did I get through that? But I think the only thing I can say to people, and that's what I say to people now, is that I was taking one day at a time. I was trying to do my best with everything, actually. And also taking an hour at a time. And times I needed to look and cry, I would do that. I wouldn't really do it around my 7 and 8 year old, because I knew he was so worried, and he's also he picks up energy so quickly. So I almost like the normality of running the house and being mum and doing the school run, I feel like helped me mentally, actually, to stay well.
So it gave you structure, didn't it? So, you knew you had to get up, you knew you had to look after him and do what you need to do. gave you that kind of structure,
Yeah.
some sort of normality, whatever
It did, and
normality is.
also, yeah, and I think also at the time, the hospital, he was in UCH hospital in London, and the staff were amazing. So I felt almost like they were aunties looking after him. They had that kind of family feeling. And because they were so small, obviously there were incubators. There was an open incubators for quite a while first, and then the closed incubators. So you really couldn't you couldn't take them out to hold them. I mean, my youngest son, I never got to hold him until after he passed away. I've never got to hold him.
Bless
There
him.
was
Yeah.
he was too ill to even cuddle. So even to do that after he's gone was heartbreaking in a way. But I just loved my little family of my nurses. They were just brilliant. They were.
They are amazing though, aren't they? Nurses and doctors in that particular area. Because my daughter, she was born 5 weeks early. And I didn't see her when she was born because I had an emergency C-section.
Yeah.
And they showed me this photograph and the baby looked huge. And then they took me downstairs in a wheelchair because I had a C-section. And there was this little thing in an incubator, but I was fortunate enough that I was allowed to pick her up and have her on my chest and have that feeling of, oh, this is my baby, and I'm getting quite emotional just thinking about, back to then, if I hadn't been able to hold her, how would I have felt?
Yeah.
And it's not a feeling that sits well with me, I have to say.
It is. It's hard, and maybe if they could breathe on their own, it would have been very different. But both of them were in intensive care, and even my son, who is here now, he spent 4 whole months in intensive care.
Wow.
In and out of being critically unwell, and preparing to lose him, and then going through. So they were ventilated and oscillated, and that was how they breathed. So there's no way you couldn't move them anyway. And then when you did start with oxygen, if they were being moved or handled, that could actually make them start to, I hate the word, but it's desaturate. And then desaturated means that they're now starting to become really distressed, and then you have to put them back. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this whole new way of being with this little being, and trying to maintain my kind of spiritual peace. But
how do you keep grounded though? How do you keep going through all of this emotional trauma that you're actually going through? How do you keep on track?
You know what? I think, and it probably sounds, it doesn't even sound like it's anything great. Literally just taking hour by hour, making sure I'm feeding myself properly. Because I know a lot of the time when we're going through stress, we can not feed ourselves, but I had to make sure I was feeding myself properly, because I really desperately wanted to store my breast milk so that they would be able to breastfeed, even though it was via a tube. It was writing, meditating, taking photographs. I've literally got a photo journal of them. I just took hundreds of photographs, and just kind of spending time with my other son, just reassuring him that everything was going to be okay. I think all of that, but also at the hospital were amazing, and my consultant was amazing. She was actually from Colombia. And she decided, because she said, you're coping so well. And we know, obviously, they knew I was on my own. I had obviously my mum, but, it's not the same when you've had a baby and you don't have the partner there to support. So they actually referred me to the hospital psychotherapist, because they said I'm coping too well. I didn't know there was such a thing, but coping too well. And I just thought, I'm so thankful. I was really, first of all, thinking, I don't need a psychotherapist, but it was so nice to be able to talk to somebody about what was going on, because I didn't want to worry my mum. My mum is actually much more emotional than I am. So actually she handled the whole thing, like she found it so hard. So I didn't want to talk to her about how I was really feeling at times. Obviously my son is a 7 and 8 year old, you can't do that. friends always see me strong, and I had a few friends who were going through really serious health challenges themselves. So this psychotherapist, she was like my lifesaver for 5 months, once a week for 5 months. She was just like wonderful.
It goes to show how important it is to actually talk your feelings, even if you feel that you are being strong and you're dealing with things and everything's okay, but to be able to talk to somebody who's not involved in the situation, and then you don't feel like you're being, I know some of us, we feel like we're being a burden if we're like sharing our feelings to significant others, you know, parents, whoever within our life, to be able to talk to somebody and just get it all out of your head.
Yeah, and also just be able to move on, because when the child is kind of critically unwell like that, especially in intensive care, no 2 days are the same. So you could leave and be told, the child is doing well. I was quite active. I wanted to change the nappies, but absolutely tiny, that size, nappies, that size. And then you get a phone call to say they're taking a turn for the worse. You need to come back and prepare. And I'm like, oh my God. So that's really just an emotional roller coaster that I started to. I had to find holistic ways of dealing with that. Otherwise, I was going to not be well afterwards.
Because you are a holistic healer as well.
Yeah.
You know, one of the other strings to your bow, shall we say. So you went through all of that trauma and, you know, then you had to, you kind of had to like get your head around the fact that you're only going to take one of them home.
Yeah.
And that must have been quite difficult as well.
It was because I must say, after my youngest passed away, Shako, his name was, I was so scared that my oldest was going to, because I think, I don't know, you just are paranoid. And so I had to be scared like that for another 6 months, because it was 6.5 months he was in hospital. Imagine, his brother died at 3 weeks. And I'm thinking, oh my God, nearly 6 whole months of still being frightened. Like, when am I going to take him home? And just when I was getting ready to take him home, then he'd become really unwell. He had to have heart surgery, hernia operation. He had his heart surgery, I think he was 4 weeks old, heart surgery. So it was really a tricky time. But I must say, now I look back on it and I think it was the hardest time of my life, but it was also the most gifted time of my life, because I've been able to go back to that hospital, see other parents with children in the unit. And I'd done that probably within maybe the first 2 years of him. As soon as he came off of oxygen, because he was on oxygen for 1.5 years at home as well. So as soon as he was off of oxygen, I actually used to pop into the unit and see other parents and say to them, you know, just kind of encourage them, show them him, because you need something sometimes, or someone to see when you're actually thinking, is this possible? And I still do that now. I mean, obviously I've not been able to do it for the last year, but I still do that now. And he's like nearly 6 foot now and 14 years old.
He's always going to be your little baby though, isn't he?
Yeah.
And they hate that, even as they get older. They hate
I know.
Yeah. So if we fast forward then, so he's out of hospital, he's home, you know, he's growing, but then you've had challenges with his development as well, have you not?
Yes, I have, because he came home and he was on oxygen for 1.5 years. He was also on 16 different medications, so I wasn't able to get anything more than 2 hours sleep. I used to have to keep on medicating him. Plus, he was under 5 different specialists. So it's quite usual when the children are born that early to have either learning difficulties or developmental issues. And I'm so glad as well, in a way, because I was told there was an 83% chance of him not being able to walk or talk and being severely disabled.
Well, he proved them wrong, didn't he?
Exactly. And I said, that's not happening, because I'm not going to even put that in my head. So he came out of hospital and he used to really hate touch and stuff. And as soon as I got him home, I just started doing crystal healing, touch therapy, my Reiki, everything with him actually. Now he can't stop hugging people. Well, can't stop hugging me, really. But I mean, I just thought he's not going to be unwell like that. I haven't got space for him to be unwell. And I thought sometimes people, even if they're saying things in your best interest, something that can be said can really stop you from actually, reaching past that point. I thought, if he is severely disabled, I'll deal with it. But for now, in my head, I'm going to make him as well as I can. So his disabilities for his age are so, for his gestation, are so mild. I mean, a lot of the time he's been involved in a lot of research, non-invasive, and we've gone and spoke to doctors and consultants because I've just let him just develop, actually. So he does have...
You're saying he has disabilities.
Yeah.
What kind of disabilities does he actually have?
So he still has chronic lung disease, which he would have for life because of being born so young and his lungs not being fully developed. Most of the time that doesn't cause him any problems unless he's doing exercise, and then he just gets breathless quicker than your average child would. And the other issues he has are more learning disabilities. So he's got dyslexia, he has dyspraxia and dyscalculia, and he also has processing difficulties. So he just finds it a bit harder to work out things, but he's very smart. He's also very intuitive himself, and if he loves whatever it is he's trying to learn, then he actually becomes quite advanced in that area.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we just find ways to deal with it. And I always say to him, his disabilities are his abilities, because what he can do with other things other people can't. He just struggles with the academic side of life, really.
I think that it's amazing that he thinks that way and that you've actually instilled that in him, because it's not about having a disability, it's about having different strengths. Yeah, we all have different strengths. We have different strengths, we have different weaknesses, and some of those weaknesses are not really weaknesses, they're actually our strengths. We don't realise it because there's this label said that you're a weakness because you can't walk or talk or you can't cook a certain way or whatever it might be. And actually, we need to start focusing on what our strengths actually are and stop looking at each other as, well, you can't do this, so therefore you're not, this type of person, and so on. And I think it's really, really, again, hats off to you for showing your son and instilling in him that actually you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, he surprises me because I don't know. By the age of 10, he'd already published 2 pieces of work. He's won awards, and his passion is St John's Ambulance and helping people. So he's a qualified first aider. As soon as he could do that qualification, he did it. And he's already won an award.
Apple hasn't fallen far from the tree, is what I'm going to say.
No. And he's won an award already for services to community. That was 2 years ago.
That's 4 years. I remember when you told us about that, and it was like, what?
Yeah, and I'm thinking that at that time, I think he was 12. But he's been passionate about people, and he always talks about helping people and helping babies and having his charity as well when he's older. And he's been saying that since he's probably 3 years old, maybe 4, articulating it better, because he's also had speech and language difficulties as well.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Now then, he's developed into an amazing human being. Okay. And as we say, he's a human being, not a human doing.
Yes.
There's a big difference between a human being and a human doing.
Yeah.
And he's definitely a being. So he's being himself, you're being who you are, but where are you right now in your own journey?
My journey, I'm actually now starting to do my passion work. I mean, my passion work has always been people, but now the last 3 years I've really started to focus, because I always used to think, how am I going to help people? And quite bizarrely, and I think we do it in society, our story, especially if it's not the perfect story or a story that we think should be perfect, we hide it. So a lot of my story, I used to hide it, and just speak to people more one-to-one. And that's now what I actually do. I actually share my story, but I share how I've overcome all of what I've been through in my life.
Because you are an international speaker.
Yes.
You know, you have won awards yourself. You're a poet. You're an author. And I was honoured to be featured in one of your publications. So, you know, thank you for that. You know, along with some amazing, amazing women. So you know, how does a girl from Hackney end up being an international speaker? I mean, your journey has been like that. There's no straight line at all.
It has. I must say, most of when I feel like I've really fully achieved what it is, I have to be in that flow state. And so for me, I always take, when I take the inspired action, I get really big results. So if something's a bit scary to me, or I just think, okay, I need to do that, a lot of the time I'm listening to my intuition and kind of doing my meditation and thinking, okay, that's what I need to do. I'm not going to keep sitting down questioning it too much. I'm not going to plan out big strategies, just do it. And then that's what's led me to all these doors kind of opening and closing at the time. And I just trust, because I really do feel the universe has your back. You're doing things for the highest and greatest goods of yourself and people. The universe works with you, and you really don't know how. And I can't remember what a speaker used to say, it's not the how, don't worry about the how, it's actually just getting whatever it is done. So even for my first international kind of speaking opportunity, it was a really lovely marketing coach I was working with at the time. And then she was doing a trip to the Caribbean. I'd never been to the Caribbean yet. I'd been to parts of Africa and Europe. And never been to the Caribbean, even though my dad's side of the family is Jamaican. So I ended up in 2018 doing my first international talk, and that was in Antigua, beautiful island of Antigua. It was I was so scared, but I just thought the things that happened, oh my gosh, it was just like serendipitous actually just getting there and everything else. I thought it was impossible, and then everything started falling into place. Finances fell into place to get there. The childcare fell into place. Everything just fell into place.
Well, it's like you said, the universe had your back, and you were getting on hella high water. There was no way you were not going to go there, because it did open up a lot more doors for you. Yeah,
it did. And I think it also, me being able to speak as well, and talk to people about my story, but also how to overcome things, has also allowed me to not only just kind of build confidence in myself for being so different, I feel, because I think I said to you before, never had a full-time job, and I always used to feel like, what's wrong with me? Why have I never? Now I realise people like us are called entrepreneurs or creative entrepreneurs because that's what I've always done. And it's actually just feels like everything that's happened has led me to this time and this place to do this work. It's wonderful work with women, especially at this time now. And just to be able to help them to see that they can create their life by design as well.
I think you're amazing. And I keep saying that, and I will continue to say that for every day. You really are. You're so inspiring, because from the first moment I met you to now, every time I listen to you, I could just listen to you for hours, literally. And your voice is so calming, and it's just so wonderful hearing your story, and said with such humility as well. But there's behind all of that there's always that belief that no matter what is happening, no matter what is going on, it's happening for a reason, and it will work itself out.
Yeah, and I think once you think like that, because I mean, I did spend some years of thinking that, why is this happening to me? You know, like bad things are always going to happen, all this stuff. And then I just thought, no, deep down in my soul, I know that everything that happens has got positive and negative. We know this anyway. So why am I choosing to keep seeing the negative out of everything? And even some of the work I do now with women, I kind of take them through certain situations that have happened in their life. And obviously you see it as negative. But when I really dig deep and help them to pull out the positive things they learned during that time, I think a lot of them are just really shocked with the insights as well.
Yeah, I have to agree with you so much on that, because, when I look back on my own life and how I've got to where I've got to, it would be easy to say, oh my God, this happened. Oh my God, that happened. In a negative way. But actually, when I look back, it's like, oh my God, look what I learned. I can say that now, but when you're in it, sometimes it's hard to look at, well, what am I learning? Because you're going through something at that point.
Yeah.
If I hadn't have experienced all the things that I experienced, I would not be sitting here having the conversation I'm having with you right now.
Yeah. And I think also as society, we're always we're always taught that if something negative happens, that we need to actually think about it negatively anyway. And I just think, oh my God, once we really start taking back power, because that's really about taking back power over your life. It doesn't matter what happens to you. We've got choices, we've got power, and we can actually exert that. And I think now, at this time where people are starting to pause and really look at their life, they're starting to realise that no one else really is in charge of your life, so to speak, without you saying yes. Because if you say, there's a lot of people I know who've actually now left jobs that they didn't like. And I'm thinking, wow, it's taken this time to do that. But they realise that saying yes to someone else and someone else's dream is saying no to themselves. They've been saying no to themselves for years.
Yeah, because a lot of us are fulfilling somebody else's dream and putting ours on the back burner.
Exactly. Or being too afraid to do it.
Unless you get a plan together to put it into action.
Yeah.
And I tend to say, okay, a dream's a dream, then you can plan it, but a plan remains a plan unless you really do something with it. You have to take action on it. Otherwise, you will just keep fulfilling somebody else's dreams.
Yeah, it's so true. It is.
Hyacinth, I don't know how to thank you. The time has just flown by. But how can people get hold of you before we sign off?
They can get hold of me on my website, which is www.hyacinthmyers.com. And everything's on there. Actually, my website links into everything else.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that your website link is actually on the information underneath this our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always a bit nervous, but it's actually been really great.
It's just us two talking, really, isn't it? So
yeah,
and a few people watching at some point. But thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me. I've learned so much more. Like I said, I've known you for about 3-4 years now. I've learned more about you today than I have in a while. We've not really seen each other because of COVID. And we keep trying to catch each other, but we keep missing each other because of other commitments and so on. But I'm just glad that we were able to make this happen. So thank you so much for coming on board, because you are an inspired woman who inspires other women, not just women, but I like to say inspired people inspire people. And you're definitely one of those. So,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I hope you've really enjoyed this week's episode of the Inspired By series with me, Manjit Nijja, your host. And I shall look forward to welcoming another guest next time. Thank you for watching.